PGA past president and president of Hampton Golf, M.G. Orender.
Good morning. We have with us today three panelists who are coming up behind me. I thought I'd lost them. We have from Billy Casper, the Vice President of Sales and Marketing, Emily Clark. From Morton Golf Management, Mike Woods. And Rock Lucas, the owner of Charwood Country Club. We appreciate your being here. We're going to go through a series of questions about something that's very important to all of us, is dealing with dynamic pricing, third-party management, or third-party tee time booking companies, and then we're going to try and leave some time for Q&A at the end. So I'm going to open up with a question for all of you. We'll start with Emily. How do each of you manage your tee time inventory and pricing, and who does it?
Is this working? Oh, it
Yes.
is. Ooh, hello. Thanks. We manage our pricing and inventory at Billy Casper. We combination of centrally in our office as well as in conversation with the general managers and the team on site. And we manage the pricing in all channels, so online, Res Center, and at the shop. And we control all our rates despite the channel. So we control the rates as well as what day parts, what rate and what day part across all. So ongoing dialogue.
Okay.
Yes, so for Morton Golf at the Hagan Oaks Golf Complex, as well as our other facilities, we're municipal facilities. And for the last 2 years, we've worked with the Dynamic Revenue Services company and dynamically priced our tee sheets at the municipal golf courses. And so we have a revenue manager within Dynamic Revenue Services that we work with. And we found him to be an expert in this area to help coach us and to have great dialogue back and forth about pricing. And that's how we do it.
Okay. Rock?
We're a little different. We're a single course operator, so we're not the Billy Caspers or the municipals. We're a smaller market. Most everything is going to be done through staff, our golf professional management. In our weekly meetings, we monitor course conditions and the environment, what's going on weather-wise, and work our way around the tee sheet that way. And I wanted to start out and say we do it the old school way. We see what the guy down the street's charging and charge $4 less.
I'm going to take that to one more level. What are the most important lessons you've learned in managing your price and yield at your facility, and what would you not do again? Go with.
I think lessons we've learned in managing rate, by doing dynamic or variable rates on your online channels, you can often see what rates people are purchasing. So you understand what the golfer perceives the value to be, and oftentimes if your price is consistently selling at a variable rate that's less than your posted rate, you start to learn and understand what the true demand is and what people are willing to pay for your course. So you get some consumer feedback that way and understand what the true posted rate should be in that price, and you can adjust from there. So I think it's been one of the biggest advantages of having a team that does the dynamic pricing and understands behavior.
Yeah, so in the municipal environment, I think we were pretty typical in that we would propose green fee rates to, in our case, the city of Sacramento, and we'd be looking for approval. And then we would live with those rates typically for a year, unless we felt real strong that we need to go to bat to change them again. And we were nervous that in the municipal environment that our consumer would be okay with dynamic pricing, and that held us back for a while. And then when we made the leap to go to dynamic pricing, what we found is the sell, so to speak, to the city of Sacramento was so fast, it kind of scared me. And what the city officials said is, well, most of the stuff I buy is dynamically priced. Why wouldn't you do it at the golf course? And we were very nervous about the consumer standing in line paying different rates. Well, we've never had an issue with that in 2 years. And so that really turned the corner for us, that the consumers really, a lot of our consumers are either buying time or they're buying price, and we can talk to them in different ways and charge different rates at different times of the day, and they'll respond to that.
Once again, being a small operator in a smaller market, we've looked into the dynamic pricing, and most of it, you're going to need to be a 20 to 30% online booking, and the dynamic pricing is mostly going to work online or walk-in out-of-town guests, but your day in and day out for us, it just wasn't beneficial. We've also found that dynamic pricing requires a lot of manpower to be constantly monitoring the situation. If you have a small staff, it's probably not for you, which is not for us. But we did try to take the technology and learn from those who are doing it and try to incorporate that into the old school T-sheet way of doing things. And what we would not do again is, be as much concerned as what our competitors are doing down the street. We're going to try to, getting away from that for the most part and doing our own thing. And we would not go back to a third-party provider. We did it forever. We did it for a long time, but we would not go back to it again unless the practices change. And once again, that goes back to if you have manpower to be constantly monitoring what they're doing and correcting it, then it's fine. But if you don't, then I'd probably suggest staying away from it.
Well, I've got 2 follow-ups on dynamic pricing. What have you done if you're doing dynamic pricing? I think, Rock, you probably do it a little less as a standalone operator, but for all of you, how do you inform the public and your consumer how dynamic pricing works? Because dynamic pricing isn't always just time. Sometimes it's advanced booking like airlines do, but how do you educate your clientele as to what you're doing? Emily?
We don't spend a lot of time talking about it being dynamic, and I think the better word for is variable, because it's varying throughout the day. It's responsive to utilization, to past performance, maximizing revenue in that day part. And consumers, I think, much like Mike said, are pretty used to that in retail settings. We do spend time making people aware that our lowest rates are online. So it's probably more of the education. You'll find the best rate available online. And there's a commitment to price parity on our websites for our courses and the third-party channels. So you're never going to find a lower rate at a third party than you would on our own website. And I think that's more of that education piece, that you can find the best rate there, and being committed to that price parity is a lesson we probably all learned in the past few years, and the hotel industry learned 20 years ago.
So Emily, I'm going to go back to you for a second. If your rate is, if you're with a third-party provider and the rate is basically the same, but the difference is there's no booking fee, for example.
Absolutely, it's good for us.
Yeah, so,
Yeah.
So
we spend more time driving people to our website,
right,
versus really spending a lot of time talking about dynamic. We've learned with just making, much like you guys would, making some data-driven decisions around pricing. We've learned that what we've seen is a course has to have a minimum of about 140 rounds a day, and online presence of 25 to 30% before dynamic really makes sense. Otherwise, you'll see, from what we've seen, you'll see some just artificial degradation of the rate because it wants to pull it down to fill up a course that might not ever fill up. Does that make sense?
yes, it does. Mike, how do you guys do it?
Yeah, so real similar to Emily's courses, the words dynamic and stuff is more industry kind of stuff. Our staff at the counter is preaching for your best rates, go to hagenoaks.com, for example. And the consumer really responds to that. And so that's the education process. And then with third parties, our strategy is to price the third parties anywhere between 10 and 15% higher than our rates online. So when we say best prices available at our website, we really mean that. We hold true to that because when they go shop at other places, it's not only higher, but then a lot of times you have booking fees in addition to that.
Right.
I'm going to get to a 30,000 feet. Doing a lot of homework and research, it's kind of reminded me of old school PGA was what's around. Is it a start? Is it 18 holes? Is it 18-hole equivalency? We're taking 9s and dividing them by 2, and what are we doing? So dynamic pricing is kind of the same. Is dynamic pricing truly dynamic pricing, where you have no set rates whatsoever, and it is what it is when you call in or you go online and book, just like an airline? Or is it a hybrid? And I've seen most everybody's using a hybrid, whereas we're using mostly dynamic pricing online, but not at the golf shop. So I guess I'm seeing dynamic pricing is really starting to get traction, but we really don't have a definition of what is dynamic pricing.
Got it. Well, I'm going to give you one that as an operator I've run into, I'm sure you have, and I want to know how you deal with it, is someone has bought some special online through a third party and paid $15 for a round versus what you feel is your best rate, or if your dynamic pricing model has in advance ability to buy and save money, like an airline scenario. You got two people show up and you put them in the same foursome. It's not like on an airline, you don't look at the guy next to you and go, what did you pay? And you got two people who've paid distinctly different rates paired up. How do you deal with that?
Yeah, I think that those were the questions I was asking our dynamic revenue services company on the front end. I was really afraid of that. I mean, I have personal relationships with these customers for quite a few decades, and I was really nervous about that. I can't remember that ever happening in 2 years. And I think my response would be, if I chose to offer a special at XYZ, I would want to educate that consumer, hey, take a look at this special. I mean, if we're offering it, you should buy that. And for the future, I would encourage them to do that, but I don't remember that happening.
Okay, all right. Well, I'm glad it hasn't happened to you. It happened to me once and never again, by the way. When you are dealing with a third party, I know, Rock, you said you don't anymore, but when you're dealing with a third party provider, there's obviously barter, a flat fee you can pay, or a percentage. How do you go about evaluating what is the best for you in your company or facility? Emily?
So, depending on what the service is, right? I think we are commission modeled and support the channel as a distribution. I think we have to understand that golfers' behavior is their own. If that's where they want to book their times, they're going to. And so fully support the channel as a distribution method, which with fair commissions, and the lower commission, the better. I mean,
Right.
And so we really take a look at what the cash price for something would be versus the cost of those tee times at the APR, at the utilization, and just do a cost analysis of what makes sense. And we've stuck to mostly commission models across the board.
When you do a commission model, do you do it on your entire tee sheet, or is there a limitation as to, and this is for all of you, or is there a limitation to what tee times they can have or not have? What kind of control do you put on that commission model?
We have complete control over price and time of the round, so 100%.
So you do control that.
Yeah, so in our case, we use the barter model, and boy, those are really muddy waters when you use that, and we talk about that every week, and we're always analyzing it, trying to determine if we're using the best method. We dictate the time, and we do analysis every week on what those would have sold for based on our occupancy percentage, what paid rounds are getting driven in by that third party. And that's a tough thing to analyze. And with my team, when we have 4 or 5 of us in the room, we tend to be split on if we should continue to do business with that one third party or not.
Rock?
You can kind of look how this thing trickles down here. You got Emily, and then you got Mike, and then you got Rock. So, and the system works the exact same way. It's kind of the golden rule. He has the gold rules, and the gold's kind of working down here. So we're down here at copper on our end. So it all depends who you are in what market, and not only the market, but who you are in the market. And if you're at the top of the food chain in your market, then you have a whole lot more negotiating and bargaining power, and you can get something for 1 tee time barter versus it might cost a guy down the road 4 tee times to get the exact same product and services that the 1 tee time person's getting. And it's amazing that it works that way, but that's the real world. And if I was doing it again, I would, they will give you an option. Whoever it is, they'll give you options, but my option on commission and my option on cash is be completely different than these guys' option on commission and cash. So you're almost in a handcuff, no hold barred. You have to do barter if you're going to do it.
But I think it's important. This session's a perfect example of the education of the guidelines and the Bill of Rights and the succinct message that Jay delivered on being educated on what's fair and what everyone's agreed to. They signed on. We've agreed to this. So you have negotiating power. You do. You can have a conversation around it and understand those Bill of Rights and stand up for your inventory. It belongs to you. The relationship doesn't work if they don't have the inventory. Whether you have a lot of courses or one, it doesn't matter. It doesn't exist, right?
If you do choose barter, what is your accounting method or treatment for the value of the rounds that you are putting up for the trade? I guess this is really to you. You're the only one doing barter.
Yeah, great question. So, I mean, we don't, as far as through revenue or through accounting, we call them rounds, but we call them rounds that had a zero green fee attached to them. And then the analysis after that is really, okay, what would you have sold at that time period? What revenues would you have brought in? And what is that third party selling for you in revenues that we keep? And that's the consistent analysis.
Okay. So how important is it to all three of you? I know, Rock, you said you're no longer doing some of this, but what kind of flexibility do you have or would want to have and would tell these people that they should have in the ability to cancel or terminate a contract with a provider that is not living up to, because we all know that there's times someone tells you they're going to do something, you find out later if you have the manpower and the time to watch where your tee times are going in other channels, what is important to you and what do you think is a fair and reasonable time frame to be able to say, I'm done?
Yeah, so in our case, I would only do a month-to-month contract, and we can cancel for any reason, anytime. I wouldn't do it any other way. And then with some of the third parties, they have a lot of affiliates that they work with, and I'm not comfortable with selling tee times on many of those affiliates, so we really restrict where they can sell tee times. But month-to-month, cancel at any time. They can cancel me at any time. I can cancel them at any time. That's the only way I would do it.
Even though we're not using, we still stay very well versed in the topic and subject and with other operators around the country. I could see, if you did a year contract, that's fine, but as long as you got out that if they didn't behave properly or they had some poor performance behaviors, then you immediately, but if there's some type of long-term or some specific marketing program that they did for you and they've got money tied up, I can see a little bit, 30-day. And I'm going to go back real quick to Emily's 200 golf courses and my one golf course. Yeah, we have this Bill of Rights, but the Bill of Rights still goes back to what is your negotiating power and bargaining. And if I'm negotiating one golf course in a smaller market versus a Hagen Oaks and a big operator, that's a completely different bargaining tool.
Well, I would say that part of the Bill of Rights and what we're doing today and the NGCOA and the PGA is education. Because even if you're a one club operator, if you know what your rights are and you're educated, I think you can negotiate, certainly, maybe not the same deal someone with 25 or 50, but you can negotiate a fair deal for yourselves. Talk to me about data collection, both obviously third-party providers are supposed to get you data in most cases. There's a process to go through. What do you do to make sure you get your data, not only from third-party providers, but at your own facilities? And then the follow-up question is, how do you use that data?
So we love collecting data, and starting with an email address at the counter, and we have a pretty passionate team around making that a priority. So we have a percentage that we like to reach, and we have a competition around it, and we're constantly showing a leaderboard of data collection, and it's just, it drives the whole thing, right? So what we do with it is probably not time for in this, but as personalized as we can get in our invitations or in our offers that we want to do. So the more we know, the better. And it's a high priority at the counter to not only get the person checking in, but golfer 2, 3, and 4. I'm sure this is everyone's best practice, but it's the most valuable thing you can do is get that piece of information and then continue to add attributes to that guest and learn more about them so that you can invite them back in the way that they want to come back and provide an experience that they want to have. So it's a high priority, if not the highest.
Yeah, I echo exactly what Emily said there. We're really into collecting data and getting to know our customers and building relationships. And so we measure every single Pro Shop cashier and what their percentage is of collecting email addresses. We have a benchmark of a minimum standard. We're always doing sales contests. We're always making it fun. There's been times where we've had small commission models for our cashiers and their ability to collect email addresses. And then, one of the things we learned in our retail world years ago was the power of target marketing. And so, in our Hagen Oaks Super Shop, we got really good at having maybe the new Jamie Saddock line come out, and it's in boxes in our shipping and receiving, and our salespeople were reaching out to their hundreds of Jamie Saddock loyalists and saying, come now, come today, it's going to go fast. And we do the same thing on the green fee side over the last few years. It's really up to the facility and the people to be creative and to figure out how you can segment your lists and your customer, and then how you can talk to them in the language that's really they're going to respond to. And some people think we're good at that. We think we got a long way to go, but that's what we do, and we're really into collecting that info.
If I hear it correct, that's a two-part question. One's in-house and one's third-party. In-house, hopefully online, everything's automatically collected online on the online bookings and everything. If it's a walk-up, your point of sales are using the pop-ups, showing that these fields are empty and that you need to complete these fields. And if they're in a hurry, you put the forms on the counter for, and you do everything from simple as birthday clubs to drawings, giveaways to, information promotions. Those types of things, and we use the point of sale to tell us what percentage of our play we have the data on, and whatever data it is that you're looking for. So specifically, if it's email, we're starting to go to text messaging now, and there's a couple of these providers out here that are starting to get in that in a pretty good way because people respond to text instantly. So that's our next thing we're still doing email, but we're really going to start concentrating heavily on text. Third party is a different story. It depends on what I negotiated in my Bill of Rights with the third party. Am I getting it automatically? Am I going to get it once a month? Am I going to have to be strong-arming them and, hey, I didn't get my data? Or if I don't have those automatically, then I have to convert it at the point of sale and convert them from being the third party's customer back to being my customer.
So for all of you, and Rock, Hagen Oaks, because you're at a facility, Casper, obviously, with your brand of your company and the courses you manage and want to protect. When you're giving someone the right to, as a third party or any marketing company, the right to market that club's name specifically, how do you protect your brand? How and when it can be used? What do you ask for and negotiate for and make sure it's contractual?
Well, I think we touched on a little bit of the affiliates and being aware of where else it might show up. I think that's really important. So I'm not necessarily against the other ones as long as the rate is what we need and what we've discussed and what we've chosen. But the awareness around that, we haven't run into any brand poor behavior. There is, I think, the only place I'll caveat that is fair spend on search terms. So in digital placement, we spend a lot of time making sure we have a chance to represent our clubs in paid search and online advertising with a budget that's reasonable for us and for our courses. When you go up against some of the bigger aggregators, that could get a little imbalanced. So being fair around course search terms, and those are off the table. So it's different. It's a little different, but it's protecting the brand online and having the right to promote your brand in a fair way,
right,
with paid advertising.
So, and I think what you're alluding to or talking about for the folks sitting here, there are practices that have been used where if I put in a course name with slight variation, I'm directed somewhere else. Is that what you were referencing? Okay.
Yeah, and I would echo what Emily said, and I found as just operating a couple courses, a lot of times I'm talking to an area rep or a regional rep. And a lot of times they don't necessarily have an understanding of what their company does. as a consumer is searching. That's not necessarily their wheelhouse. So, I mean, I have to push up and get to the right people within the third party to have those conversations, and then typically we'd put some language in a contract to deter them from doing exactly what you mentioned.
Again, I think it's a two-part. Am I on board with third parties? Am I, negotiated a contract? Did I give them the rights to use it? Still, you got to have that manpower to manage. Are they using it how we agreed? Then it's a whole other conversation if you're not on the platform, but you're still being used. And I had a conversation with a group, when I asked the third-party provider about that, what you just said, and they said, well, we're not buying your name. We're buying, like golf, or we're buying this, or we're buying this. So we're not really, hijacking your name, but they are. But I was on the floor, and there's I think it's 1-to-1 is running a free report, and they'll run it for you daily. From what I understand, I got to look into it more, but they'll run a report daily, every morning, and scan the internet and everything for whatever, if your name has been used in any way, shape, or form, and then if it has against your policies, then they'll screenshot it and send it to you. Now it's up to you to whatever you're going to do with it. And that's where the problem is. What do you do with it after you find out? There's not a whole lot unless you're going to, arm up a lot of attorneys and lawyers.
So that we don't position this that third-party dealings are a bad thing, because they're not in all cases if you're educated, to your point earlier. I'd like you to highlight some success stories with sharing access through a third-party tee time provider, doing business with them, and why is it important for operators to be able to share or restrict access to them, even if they're in business with them. But let's start with the first part, some success stories of dealing with third-party tee time providers.
I think the overall success is just the additional eyeballs, right? I mean, we want people to be able to play golf at our golf course, and if that's where they're searching and that's where they want to transact, then we need to be willing to meet golfers where they want to transact, when they want to play our course, at the rate they want to play. All of that personalization, it exists in the way that they book golf too, right? So I'm fully supportive of the distribution channels, again, with fair commissions and good behavior, but I don't have a specific success story to speak to other than pure acquisition of eyeballs that go beyond any course's database and volume.
Yeah, I would echo that. We want to get eyeballs on our facilities, and that is one of the places the consumer likes to go. And to a large extent, we feel like we're doing our job if a third party maybe drives in the consumer to play a round of golf, and then our role is to develop a relationship with them, to collect data, to make sure to show them a great time. And we're hoping they enjoy their experience, to follow up with them afterwards, to ask them to join our group, our club, our loyalty program. And some of the third parties are really effective at sending us new customers at times. And then also some of the third parties over the years, you create some pretty major databases of email databases. So we might have a special or a promotion or something we're doing where it's pretty easy to reach out to those groups of our customers through this other avenue. And we found that to be successful at times.
I'm going to back up and digress a minute and make sure I understand and go on the record. I am not against any third-party provider.
No.
I know. All I'm saying is that it's a really, really good tool. And if you're in the right market, the right facilities, and you have the right staff, it's amazing. The tools and resources they have available are unbelievable. But but the problem is if you get the wrong operators and they do the old, show them age, the old Ronco TV commercial, set it and forget it.
Yep.
Then you get into a lot of trouble. And so it's a really powerful tool. And when we first started using it, we had a little extra staff that was kind of, pre-crash, and everything was great. But the data we were collecting, the rounds it was great. But but you've got to be at the right place, right time, right people, right staff, right market, right facility.
I'm going to turn it over for some Q&A. We got about 10 minutes left. And depending on how many questions, I may ask each of you for a closing remark if you want to think about something you would say to advise for the good of the industry, the business. So, do we have any questions, right? Hold on, I'm sorry, they got a microphone coming to you, sorry.
Okay, thank you. Do you track ancillary revenues such as food and beverage, driving range time, merchandise with the third-party customers?
Yes.
Do,
we
and
can.
excuse me, and do those decisions affect like your barter times and whether you're going to do it or not?
So I can't say we've done a lifetime value analysis on a guest segmented by which channel they came in on. I think we're capable of it. It doesn't, to my knowledge, has not been a part of any of our negotiations. I'm very aware of what our spend is in each of those verticals per guest, but what channel they came from as the segment hasn't driven our decisions so far.
Oh, did you want to say something first?
Okay, so same answer. We're as far as measuring it by channel, I haven't done that before. Not quite that sophisticated, but I'm going to give you my feel because I'm pretty solid on my feel on this one. So the third-party consumer that comes in with a paid round is pretty similar to any other guests that we have. The barter, sometimes trade time type of consumer that comes in tends to spend at a far lower level at our facility.
I'll echo exactly what Mike said. If it's you can go one level further. If it's a out-of-town traveling destination type, they'll spend more. If it's a local in town, they're going to spend the same as your regular. If it's a trade time, you're going to probably hardly see any additional spend.
And then the second part was, do you track your third party when you convert them over to your own system just to see how you've brought in customers and now you've converted?
Yes.
Yeah, in our case, no.
I didn't hear exactly.
Yeah, it's-
Something about conversion.
It's been about 50-50 of people will come over to the website as a channel or they stay with third party. I think it's preference.
Thank you.
Any other questions? All right. Any closing, just a closing comment? We'll go all the way down to Rock. We'll let him start first this time.
I kind of did my closing when I did my statement about where I stood, but as far as I'm just going to say, general golf. I think I think golf is bottomed out. I think we're on the uptick. I think we keep doing the basic fundamentals and we keep taking care of a customer. I don't think that had several meetings with some powers to be, and I don't think that yeah, you've got to quit golf, and we need to do some of those things for that market. But I think we need to do a better job of marketing the game in golf. And I love my USGA buddies, and I just spent last week with them on some really good things. But I don't think, while we're young, I think we need to do the opposite. We need to, people are spending time at baseball games and football games, and they're spending entire days and 5 hours at events, that things they're enjoying doing. We need to promote that part of the game, that aspect that, hey, I'm not talking about the 5 and 6 hour rounds. I'm talking about your 3.5 to 4.5 hours. But promote that, and it's fun, enjoyable with your friends and family, and we need to do a better job of doing that part of the game.
Well said. On this topic, it's my role to create those relationships with third parties, and I do the best I can. And what I've found over the years is that negotiate. It's all negotiable. And if you think it's not, I get surprised over and over again. Where I really put my focus on this topic, though, is with my team right at the counter and how well we're doing in building relationships, collecting data, marketing to our guests, and the experience that we provide to our guests. And I really find that I get a much better return when I focus on that end of our business.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with either of you more. I think if we can move away from looking at price as the driver and the only reason people decide on their experience, and move into focusing on the experience, what they get there, creating a fun reason for them to come back, and just living in this space together with third parties. It's a really symbiotic relationship. They don't have a distribution channel without our inventory. Mine, yours. If you have 1, 10, doesn't matter. Mm-hmm. So behaving well together and coming to something like this and understanding your rights. It's a pretty small group. I wish there was more people here, because I think it's up to all of us to spread this word and to understand that they've signed on. So we're in this together, but creating fun reasons, giving them an experience, and just moving away from $1 or $2 here and there as the reason someone would come back to your facility? Like, give them something bigger than that.
Well, first of all, I thank the panelists. They're from very different types of facilities and walks in the business. I want to close, though, with a couple quick remarks. First of all, it's incumbent on us in the business to talk about golf's, I even hate to use the word rebound, but we are rising. We are rising again. I think it's very important to put that message out there. I've seen 5 or 6 straight quarters of year-over-year, quarter-over-quarter financial growth. So I'm seeing some good things. Is it where we want it? No. Second is the operators have to be educated. It's incumbent on all of you, because if you can educate the other operators around you and help them be better, it makes absolutely better for everyone. And last but not least, to Rock's point, I'm 63, I've got a pair of 20-year-olds, and I will tell you that when they were little and I was at their basketball games and their soccer games, I was looking around the courts and the fields at guys my age wearing Titleist or Callaway hats who would much rather be at the golf course. So you need to find ways to make it interesting. We have little links. The PGA has several programs. Create your own program. Give parents a reason to bring their kids to your golf course on the weekend instead of the soccer fields and the baseball fields, and you will see a wonderful growth in our industry. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you again. Appreciate it.
Thanks.
Thank you, and we hope you enjoyed this conversation. You can look forward to more things like this in the future as we continue to work together, working with golf course operators, golf course owners, vendors, management companies, all sitting at the table with one common goal at the end of the day, and that's to grow the game and lift the industry so that all parties can keep golf in the healthy place that it deserves to be in. Thank you.